And good morning. Today we're going to be taking a look at what it takes to actually find a value using one of our generic-based lists or arrays in C++. And so we're going to take a look at the actual logic and algorithm for this. Rather than simply just writing the code, we're going to look at the steps it takes to actually make that happen. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Right here we have our header for the method. It's an int method because it's going to tell us where inside the list it is. IndexOf is a standard name for that. It tells us inside the list where we're looking at. And then because we're looking for something, it's a type. And we're going to call it search value because it's what we're searching for. Again, basic naming conventions, name things what they are and what they do. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first thing we have to do. When we're going ahead and using methods inside lists and data structures, one of the biggest things we have to do is we have to actually identify that the data structure exists. So we're going to check that first. So check and make sure the list exists. So step one. We want to check to make sure the list exists. And so we're going to use our standard assert statement structure to make sure that's within the range, and we're good to go for that. Once we've asserted that the range itself exists, we have to go ahead and then create a value we can use and return if it's not there. And because of the fact that we're using indexOf, we're always going to start off at least at 0, going up to and including minus size minus 1. So we're not sure, though, however, what size is. So because we don't know what size is, but we know it's a number, and we know that we have to return a number for this, we're going to use a nice default value, and so that's going to be -1. So we'll go ahead and define a variable for that. And again, we'll define a variable for failure, and we'll assign it the value of -1. Because that's something that's clearly not inside the list, we're good to go for that. So once we've got those two steps done, the next thing we have to do is just because we're using a list or array, we only have access to one single spot in that, and that's with our array node that we're working with, and that array node that we only have access to by default for a single linked list is going to be our head. So we need to make sure we get a reference to head that we can actually use inside our project. So next step, get a reference to head. Once we've got that pointer reference to head, that we've created a reference to it, we can now then iterate over our structure. We're going to iterate over the structure until we find that value. And as we iterate over the structure, we're going to keep increasing our count so we can actually have that access to that value. And so we iterate over the value, checking to see if it's there. If it is, we return the value we're at for iteration. If not, we keep on looking for that next spot. So, step 4. is iterate over the list/array. Now, once we're iterating over that list/array, again, like I said, we have to check to make sure it's happening. So inside that, we use our standard tool in computer science for checking something. And that standard tool for checking is an if test. So we have an if and an else. Our else case is easy. Keep moving pointer. To the next. So we're going to keep adjusting our pointer to its next spot in the pointer structure. If it isn't, though, however, our final thing, we're going to go ahead and just return our index counter. So if we find that value at that spot, we return an index counter. If we haven't found it, we're going to keep on moving, using the pointer feature to move on and get the next value over and over again. And so finally, if all those steps fail, our last and final process, step 5, return our failure variable. So again, what we have right here, step 1, we want to check to make sure that we have the actual value. So step 1, we want to check to make sure we have the actual value that exists. Step 2, we want to go ahead and define that we have a variable that we can use for this. And when we do have it, we have that assigned to -1. Our third step, we're going to go ahead and make a pointer reference to the head. Our fourth step, we want to iterate over the list, checking each time. If we match the value, our pointer of counter gets it returned as a correct value. If we don't match the value, we're going to keep on setting our pointer to its next valid point. And then since we asserted that within this, we'll keep on looping until we hit that size. And finally, if we go over the entire list and we don't find it, we simply return our initialized variable that we had for failure of -1. And that's the basic structure we have.